She looked at the young woman in the hoodie and saw nothing but a nuisance. She saw someone who didn't belong in first class. She thought her husband's last name and her platinum status gave her the power to snap her fingers and make people disappear. But Victoria Vance made a fatal calculation that morning on Flight 492. She didn't know that the quiet girl she was physically dragging out of seat 1A wasn't just a passenger. She was the reason the plane was allowed to fly at all, and by the time the pilot came out of the cockpit, it was already too late. This is the story of how one act of arrogance grounded an entire airline. The morning sun over John F. Kennedy International Airport was blinding, glaring off the tarmac in a way that promised a headache before noon. Inside Terminal 4, the air was thick with the smell of expensive coffee and the anxious sweat of 5,000 people trying to get somewhere else. Nia Sterling adjusted the hood of her oversized charcoal grey sweatshirt. It was a Balenciaga piece, technically worth more than the suit worn by the TSA agent glaring at her, but you wouldn't know it to look at it. To the untrained eye, Nia looked like a college student running late for a lecture, or perhaps a backup dancer recovering from a hangover. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back into a messy, utilitarian bun. On her feet were worn-out sneakers that had seen the pavement of Tokyo, Berlin, and San Francisco in the last month alone. She clutched a battered leather rucksack to her chest as she navigated the crush of the first-class lounge. She wasn't trying to be invisible, but she had learned that in her tax bracket, invisibility was the most expensive luxury of all. Nia was 26 years old. She was also the majority shareholder and CEO of Sterling Hearth, a biotech firm that had just patented a synthetic enzyme capable of breaking down ocean plastics in real time. The deal she had signed 3 hours ago in a boardroom in Manhattan had pushed her personal net worth just north of $2 billion. She was exhausted. Her bones felt heavy. All she wanted was seat 1A, a glass of champagne, and 7 hours of sleep before she landed in London to meet with the Prime Minister. "Excuse me," a voice clipped behind her. Sharp, impatient. Nia stepped aside without looking, accustomed to the flow of busy spaces. A woman brushed past her, the rolling wheels of her Louis Vuitton carry-on clipping Nia's ankle. The woman didn't apologize. She was tall, blonde, and radiating the kind of aggressive perfume that smells like sandalwood and entitlement. She was on her phone, speaking loud enough for the entire lounge to hear. "No, Richard, I don't care what the broker says." The woman snapped into her iPhone. "Just sell it. I'm boarding now. I'll deal with the staff in London. They know how to treat me there." Nia rubbed her ankle, watching the woman storm toward the gate agent. She recognized the type. Old money, or perhaps new money, trying very hard to look old. The woman, let's call her Victoria Vance, was dressed in a cream-colored Chanel suit that looked like it would stain if you breathed on it wrong. Nia checked her own boarding pass. Flight 492 to Heathrow, seat 1A. She walked up to the gate. The agent, a tired-looking man named Marcus, took Nia's pass. He paused, looking from the crumpled piece of paper to Nia's hoodie, and then back to the screen. His eyebrows shot up. The screen likely flashed a VIP Do Not Disturb notification that accompanied Nia's profile. But to his credit, Marcus remained professional. "Welcome aboard, Miss Sterling," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a respectful hush. "We have you in 1A today. Thank you for flying with Pan Atlantic." "Thanks, Marcus," Nia murmured, offering a tired smile. "Is it a full flight?" "Completely booked," he nodded. "But we kept the seat next to you empty, as per your office's request." Nia nodded. She didn't buy the extra seat for space. She bought it for silence. She walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. This was her sanctuary. Once she stepped onto that plane, She could turn off the phone. She could stop being the Naya Sterling and just be a girl napping at 30,000 feet. Or so she thought. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was bathed in soft purple mood lighting. It was quiet, smelling of leather and sanitized air. Naya found 1A, the prime window seat on the left side. It was a suite, really, with a closing door and a lie-flat bed. She tossed her battered rucksack into the overhead bin and collapsed into the wide leather seat. She pulled her noise-cancelling headphones out, ready to drown out the world. She didn't even take off her hoodie. She just wanted to disappear. She closed her eyes. Click-clack, click-clack. The aggressive sound of heels on the aisle floor. Then the silence was shattered. "Excuse me." Naya didn't move. She had her headphones on, though no music was playing yet. "Excuse me." A manicured hand with a massive diamond ring tapped hard on Naya's shoulder. It wasn't a polite tap. It was a poke, a demand. Naya slid one ear cup off and looked up. Standing over her was the woman from the lounge, Victoria Vance. Up close, she looked even more severe. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes were cold, scanning Naya with a mixture of confusion and utter disgust. "Yes?" Naya asked, her voice raspy with sleep. "You're in my seat," Victoria said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the confidence of someone who has never been told no in her life. Naya blinked. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her boarding pass. She checked it again, just to be sure. 1A, Naya read. "This is 1A. Victoria rolled her eyes, a dramatic, theatrical gesture meant for the audience of other passengers now settling into their seats. "I know what the number is," Victoria hissed. "I mean, you are obviously in the wrong section. This is first class. Crew rest, or whatever you people fly, is back there." She pointed a long, accusatory finger toward the economy curtain. Naya felt a familiar heat rise in her chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was exhaustion mixed with pity. "I have a ticket for this seat, ma'am. Please check yours. You might be in 1B or across the aisle." "I'm not across the aisle," Victoria snapped her. She dropped her heavy bag onto the floor with a thud. "I always sit in 1A. My husband, Richard Vance, specifically booked 1A. There has clearly been a mistake in the system." She looked Naya up and down, her gaze lingering on the scuffed sneakers. "And looking at you," Victoria laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "It's obvious the mistake is yours. Did you sneak up here? Trying to grab a selfie before the real passengers arrive? It's pathetic. Get up." Naya didn't move. She leaned back, crossing her legs. "I'm not moving." Victoria's face went red. She turned around and shouted toward the galley, "Stewardess! Attendant!" A flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah with a terrified look in her eyes, rushed over. "Yes, Mrs. Vance. Is there a problem?" "There is a massive problem." Victoria pointed at Naya as if she were a stain on the upholstery. "This child is in my seat, and she refuses to leave. I want her removed. Now." Sarah looked at Naya, then at the manifest on her tablet. She bit her lip. She knew exactly who Naya was. The name on the manifest was highlighted in gold. But she also knew who Victoria Vance was, a Platinum Elite member who had written 3 complaints in the last month alone, one of which had gotten a colleague fired. "Mrs. Vance?" Sarah started, her voice shaking slightly. "I have Ms. Sterling listed in 1A. It's a confirmed ticket." "That's impossible," Victoria shrieked. The cabin went silent. A businessman in 2B lowered his newspaper. A couple in 3A and 3B stopped whispering. All eyes were on them. "Do you know who my husband is? He's Richard Vance of Vance Global. We own this route. I demand you check again. This girl is clearly a stowaway or an employee using a pass she didn't earn. Look at her. She looks like she's homeless." Nia sat up straighter. The insults were boring, but the volume was annoying. "Mum, you need to lower your voice." "Don't you tell me what to do." Victoria lunged forward, her hand grabbing the strap of Nia's rucksack which was resting on the ottoman. "If you won't leave, I'll help you." "Don't touch my bag," Nia said, her voice dropping an octave. It was the voice she used when a board member tried to interrupt her. It was the voice of absolute authority. Victoria ignored her. She yanked the bag. "Sarah," Nia said, looking at the flight attendant calmly, "I suggest you call the captain. Now." I, Sarah stammered. "Call him," Nia commanded, "because this woman is about to assault a passenger." Victoria laughed. "Assault? I'm taking out the trash." She pulled the bag harder, and the contents spilled out. A laptop, a tablet, a few protein bars, and a thick, heavy folder marked "Confidential Acquisition Merger." Victoria kicked the folder. "See? Junk. Now get out of my seat before I call security and have you dragged out in handcuffs." Nia looked down at her spilled belongings. She looked at the scratches on her leather bag. Then she looked up at Victoria Vance. "You really want this seat?" Nia asked softly. "I own this seat," Victoria sneered. "Okay," Nia said. She stood up. She was taller than Victoria, a fact that seemed to surprise the older woman. Nia towered over her in the confined space. "You can have the seat." Victoria smirked, triumphant. "Finally. Some sense." "But," Nia continued, stepping into the aisle and picking up her laptop, "you should know that once I step off this plane isn't going anywhere." "Empty threats from a nobody," Victoria scoffed, brushing past Nia to claim the seat, settling into the leather with a smug sigh. "Sarah, bring me a mimosa, and get someone to clean up this mess on the floor." Nia looked at Sarah. "I'm deplaning." "Miss Sterling, please," Sarah whispered, terrified. "We can find you another seat. I can bump." "No," Nia said. She wasn't angry anymore. She was executing a calculation. "I'm deplaning, and I need to speak to the gate agent. Code Red." Sarah's face went pale. Code Red wasn't a passenger term. It was an internal airline code for a security threat or an executive-level emergency. Nia grabbed her empty bag and the folder. She didn't pick up the protein bars. She turned and walked back toward the boarding door, leaving Victoria Vance smirking in seat 1A, sipping the pre-departure water she had snatched from the tray. Victoria thought she had won. She thought she had bullied a broke college student out of the best seat in the house. She had no idea that she had just stolen a seat from the woman who was currently in the process of buying the airline, and the ink on the contract was still wet. The jet bridge was quiet, a stark contrast to the hum of the cabin Nia had just left. The air here was colder, smelling of jet fuel and damp concrete. Nia walked slowly, her sneakers making no sound on the metal ramp. She wasn't rushing. She had nowhere to be anymore. The meeting in London would have to wait. In fact, if things went the way she planned, the Prime Minister would be calling her. At the top of the ramp, Marcus, the gate agent, was typing furiously on his terminal, preparing to close the flight. He looked up as the motion sensors triggered the glass doors. His jaw dropped. "Ms. Sterling?" Marcus stammered, stepping out from behind the podium. Did you forget something? The door is about to close." Nia stopped. She adjusted her rucksack on her shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of calm that was far more terrifying than rage. "I didn't forget anything, Marcus. I was removed." "Removed?" Marcus blinked, his brain failing to process the information. "Removed by who?" "Security." "By a passenger," Nia said simply. A Mrs. Victoria Vance in 1A decided I didn't look the part. She physically assaulted me and demanded I leave. Your flight crew watched it happen and did nothing. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at the screen behind him. Flight 492. Cleared for departure. He looked back at Nia. He knew what the little gold star next to her name meant. It didn't just mean VIP. It meant Board of Directors level priority. But he didn't know the full extent of it. Nobody at the operational level did. Ms. Sterling, I am so sorry, Marcus said, his voice trembling. I will get the station manager. We will get you back on. I will have Mrs. Vance escorted off immediately. No, Nia raised a hand. The flight is closed. Let them go. But, I said, let them go. Nia walked past him to the large window overlooking the tarmac. She watched as the jet bridge retracted from the plane. She watched the massive Boeing 777 being pushed back by the tug vehicle. Inside the plane, Victoria Vance was fluffing her pillow. She accepted a glass of champagne from a still-shaking Sarah. Finally, Victoria sighed, taking a sip. Peace and quiet. See? You just have to be firm with people like that. They expect handouts. You have to remind them of their place. The businessman in 2B shook his head, burying his face in his Financial Times. The cabin was tense. The flight attendants were exchanging worried glances in the galley. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. She had a feeling she had just made the worst decision of her career by not intervening. But Victoria Vance was a known terror. And the girl had just given up. The plane shuddered as the engines began to spool up. The safety video began to play. Victoria closed her eyes, ready to sleep. Back in the terminal, Nia pulled out her phone. She didn't call customer service. She didn't call a lawyer. She dialed a number saved as R. Sterling, Chairman. Nia, her father's voice answered on the second ring. You should be in the air. Everything okay? Dad, Nia said, her eyes fixed on the moving plane. Execute Clause 14 of the purchase agreement. The operational failure clause. There was a silence on the other end. Nia, that freezes the assets. That grounds the fleet. What happened? They let a passenger drag me out of my seat because of how I was dressed, Nia said, her voice devoid of emotion. The crew stood by. The culture here is rotten, Dad. I'm not buying a flying airline. I'm buying a broken one. Ground it. Ground it all. I want a full audit of every protocol before a single wheel turns again. Are you sure? Ground it. Done. Nia hung up. She watched the plane. It was taxiing now, moving toward the runway. Inside the cockpit, Captain James Miller was running through the pre-flight checklist. Flaps set. Trim set. Requesting takeoff clearance. Suddenly, the radio crackled. It wasn't the rhythmic, calm voice of air traffic control. It was the urgent, sharp tone of operations dispatch. Pan Atlantic 492, this is dispatch. Cancel takeoff clearance immediately. I repeat, cancel takeoff. Captain Miller frowned. Dispatch, 492. We are number 2 for departure. What's the issue? Weather? Negative, 492. We have a code black. Repeat, code black from corporate. Order comes directly from the chairman's office. All Pan-Atlantic aircraft are to hold position. You are ordered to return to the gate immediately. Code black. Captain Miller had flown for 30 years. He had flown through typhoons, mechanical failures, and 9/11. He had never heard a code black issued in real time. It was the nuclear option. It meant the airline was effectively ceasing to exist as an operating entity until further notice. Copy dispatch, Miller said, his throat dry. Returning to gate. He turned to his co-pilot. What the hell just happened? I don't know, the co-pilot whispered. But it's bad. In the cabin, the sensation of movement changed. The forward momentum stopped. The plane turned sharply. Victoria Vance opened one eye. "Why are we turning? We haven't taken off yet." "Probably traffic," the man in 2B muttered. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom. It wasn't the cheery, "Welcome aboard" voice. It was grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. I have some bad news. We have been ordered by our corporate headquarters to return to the gate immediately. This is not a mechanical issue. We have been grounded. We will have more information for you once we park. Please remain seated." The cabin erupted. Groans, shouts, and confused questions filled the air. Victoria Vance slammed her champagne glass down on the tray table, spilling it. "You have got to be kidding me! I have a gala tonight! Stewardess! Sarah, what is going on?" Sarah hurried out of the galley, looking pale. "I don't know, Mrs. Vance. The captain said we're grounded." "Well, unground us!" Victoria shrieked. "Call my husband. This is ridiculous." As the plane rolled back toward the terminal, Victoria looked out the window. She saw the jet bridge extending again. She saw police cars flashing their lights on the tarmac. "Oh," Victoria smiled, a cruel, satisfied smile. "I see. They caught her." "Caught who?" the man in 2B asked. "That girl," Victoria pointed at the window. "The stowaway. She must have stolen something serious for them to turn the plane around. See? I told you she was trouble. They're probably bringing the police to take statements. I'll be happy to testify." Victoria Vance sat back, smoothing her skirt, preparing to be the hero of the story. She had no idea that the flashing lights weren't there for the girl. They were there because the airline just lost its ability to fly. The seatbelt sign pinged off, but nobody moved. The atmosphere inside Flight 492 was heavy with a mix of confusion and dread. Through the windows, passengers could see a flurry of activity on the ground. Not just baggage handlers, but men in suits, serious suits. The main cabin door opened with a heavy thud. Usually the gate agent comes on to explain a delay, or maybe a mechanic. This time 3 people boarded. First was a massive Port Authority police officer, hand resting near his belt. Second was a woman in a sharp navy blazer with a badge on a lanyard, Department of Homeland Security. And third was a tall, severe-looking man holding a tablet. This was Mr. Henderson, the regional director of Pan Atlantic Airlines. He looked like a man who was walking to his own execution. The first-class cabin went silent. Victoria Vance beamed. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, waving her hand slightly to catch their attention. "Officers, over here," she called out, her voice cutting through the silence. "I'm the one who reported her. I assume you're looking for details on the intruder." Mr. Henderson stopped. He looked at Victoria. Then he looked at the empty seat next to her, seat 1A, where the rucksack had been. He looked at Sarah, the flight attendant, who was cowering in the galley. "Mrs. Vance?" Henderson asked, his voice tight. "Yes, finally," Victoria huffed. "It took you long enough. That girl was a menace, dirty, rude, obviously on drugs. I had to physically remove her belongings myself because your staff is incompetent. I assume she's in custody?" Henderson took a step closer. The police officer moved with him. "Mrs. Vance," Henderson said, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "The woman you assaulted and forced off this aircraft was not an intruder." Victoria laughed, a dismissive scoff. "Please. She was wearing a hoodie. She was probably a cleaner trying to steal liquor." "That woman," Henderson interrupted, his voice rising, "is Nia Sterling. She is the CEO of Sterling Hearth Biotech." Victoria blinked. The name meant nothing to her. "So? Some start-up brat? Does that give her the right to my seat?" "She is also," Henderson continued, sweating now, "the primary investor in the Phoenix Group." Silence. I don't know what that is, Victoria snapped. The Phoenix Group, the businessman in 2B said, speaking up for the first time. He had turned pale. They're the private equity firm that signed the acquisition deal to buy Pan Atlantic Airlines this morning. Victoria froze. She looked at the businessman, then back at Henderson. Yes, Henderson nodded grimly. Ms. Sterling isn't just a passenger, Mrs. Vance. As of 9 a.m. this morning, she is the owner of this airline. A collective gasp went through the cabin. People in row 3 stood up to get a better look. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her brain was trying to rearrange the reality she lived in, but the pieces wouldn't fit. That's a lie. She looked like a bum. Ms. Sterling exercises a specific clause in her contract, Henderson read from his tablet. Any evidence of systemic discrimination or failure of duty of care by staff or management allows her to freeze operations immediately. Because you assaulted her, and because my crew, he glared at Sarah, did nothing to stop it, Ms. Sterling has grounded the fleet. The fleet, Victoria whispered. Every Pan-Atlantic plane in the world is currently being ordered to land, Henderson said. Flight 492 is cancelled. Flight 103 to Paris is cancelled. Flight 88 to Tokyo is cancelled. Everything. Because you didn't like her hoodie. Victoria slumped back into her seat. But my husband, Richard Vance. We've already been contacted by Mr. Vance's lawyers, Henderson said. He's trying to distance himself from the situation. Apparently, the stock price of his company is dropping as the news of the grounding hits the wire. This is ridiculous, Victoria screamed, suddenly standing up again, her face turning a violent shade of red. You can't do this to me. I paid full fare. I am a platinum member. You get that girl on the phone right now. I want to speak to her manager. She doesn't have a manager, ma'am, the police officer said, stepping forward. She has security, and right now, I'm the security. Mrs. Vance, Henderson said, I am going to have to ask you to collect your belongings and deplane. The police need to take a statement regarding the assault. I'm not going anywhere. Victoria grabbed the armrests. This is my seat. I didn't assault anyone. I just moved her bag. She left voluntarily. She left because she was threatened, Henderson said. Now please, don't make this worse. I am not getting off this plane until it lands in London, Victoria screeched. From the back of the plane, a voice shouted. It was a guy from economy who had come up to see what the holdup was. Hey lady, some of us have to get to funerals. Get off the damn plane. Yeah, another passenger shouted. You grounded the whole airline? Get her off. The mood in the cabin shifted instantly. It went from curious to hostile. Victoria looked around. She saw hundreds of eyes glaring at her. Phones were raised, recording her. She realized she was trending. I will sue, Victoria hissed, grabbing her Louis Vuitton bag. I will sue this airline into the ground. You already did, Henderson muttered. Officer, please escort her. The police officer took Victoria's elbow. She yanked it away, but she started walking. She walked down the aisle, head held high, trying to maintain her dignity. But the jeers from the passengers were getting louder. Karen! Someone coughed. Nice going, lady. As she stepped off the plane and onto the jet bridge, she expected to see Nia Sterling there, waiting to gloat. She wanted to scream at the girl, but the jet bridge was empty. Nia wasn't there. Nia was already sitting in the back of a black SUV on the tarmac, watching a live stream of the stock market on her laptop. Victoria was led into the terminal, where a crowd had already gathered. News crews were setting up. The story had leaked. Billionaire owner kicked off her own plane. But the real twist wasn't just that the plane turned around. The real twist was what Nia found in that folder that Victoria had kicked across the floor. because while Victoria was worrying about her seat, she didn't realize that the folder contained the list of layoffs for the post-merger restructure. And the name at the top of the list, marked for immediate termination due to embezzlement investigation, wasn't an airline employee. It was a contractor. Vance Global Logistics, Richard Vance's company. Victoria hadn't just grounded a plane. She had just kicked the woman who held her husband's fate in her hands. And Nia Sterling was done being nice. The VIP holding room at JFK Terminal 4 is usually reserved for diplomats or A-list celebrities trying to avoid the paparazzi. It has plush beige sofas, a fully stocked bar, and soundproof glass. Today, however, it felt like a prison cell. Victoria Vance paced the length of the room, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. She was still clutching her phone, her knuckles white. "This is kidnapping!" she shouted at the closed door. 2 Port Authority officers were stationed outside, arms crossed, looking bored. "I am a United States citizen. You cannot hold me here. My husband is going to have your badges." She turned back to the room. The only other person inside was Mr. Henderson, the airline's regional director. He was sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, watching the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. The screen was tuned to CNN. The headline was flashing in bold red. Pan-Atlantic Fleet grounded. Global chaos. On the screen, a reporter was standing outside the very terminal they were in. Sources tell us that the new owner of the airline, tech mogul Nia Sterling, issued the order from the tarmac just minutes ago. This unprecedented move comes after an alleged altercation in first class involving a high-profile passenger. Analysts estimate Pan-Atlantic is losing roughly $5 million every hour the planes stay on the ground. Victoria scoffed, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. "See? She's crazy. She's burning her own money just to spite me. It's a temper tantrum. Richard will fix this. He knows the board." The door burst open. It wasn't the police. It was a man in a bespoke suit that looked like he had slept in it. His tie was loosened, his hair was a mess, and he was sweating profusely despite the air conditioning. "Richard!" Victoria gasped, rushing toward him. She threw her arms open. "Thank God, you have to get me out of here. These people are insane. That girl, that thug, she claimed to own the airline and—" Richard Vance didn't hug her back. He shoved her. It wasn't a violent strike, but it was a hard, desperate push that sent Victoria stumbling back onto the sofa. She looked up, shocked. She had never seen her husband look like this. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and filled with a terror she couldn't comprehend. "Richard," she whispered. "Shut up," Richard hissed. His voice was a dry rattle. "Just shut up, Victoria." "Excuse me?" "I said shut up," Richard roared, slamming his briefcase onto the glass table so hard it cracked. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea?" "I defended our status." Victoria defended herself, straightening her jacket. "Some girl in a hoodie tried to take seat 1A, our seat. I handled it." Richard let out a laugh that sounded like a sob. He turned to Mr. Henderson. "Has she filed it yet?" Henderson looked up, his face grim. "Ms. Sterling is in the boardroom now, Mr. Vance. Legal is with her." "Oh, God." Richard wiped his forehead with his sleeve. He turned back to Victoria, shaking his head. "That girl in the hoodie is Nia Sterling. She bought Pan-Atlantic this morning. But that's not the problem, Victoria. The problem is who we are." "We are the Vances," Victoria said haughtily. "We are untouchable." "We are broke," Richard screamed. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop. Victoria blinked. "What?" Richard began to pace, mirroring his wife's earlier movements, but with none of her arrogance. "My company, Vance Global. We handle the logistics for Pan Atlantic, the catering, the baggage handling, the fuel contracts. We have a 10-year contract worth $400 million. I know that, Victoria said. It pays for the house in the Hamptons. The contract was up for review today, Richard said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Part of the acquisition deal. Nia Sterling was flying to London to review the vendor list. She had a folder with her. A folder containing the audit of our operations. Victoria froze. She remembered the folder. The heavy, beige folder she had kicked across the floor of the plane. The one she had called trash. Victoria started, her throat dry. We've been skimming, Victoria, Richard said, tears finally leaking from his eyes. For 3 years, inflating fuel costs, ghost employees. I needed the money to pay for your trips, your jewelry, your seats in 1A. I thought I could smooth it over with the old CEO, but Sterling, she's a forensic accountant by trade. She doesn't miss a decimal point. He grabbed Victoria by the shoulders, shaking her. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the judge, jury, and executioner. And she was sitting there, quietly, probably ready to give us a chance to explain. And you dragged her out of her seat like a dog. I didn't know, Victoria sobbed. You made it personal, Richard yelled. If she finds that folder, if she opens that file now, with a grudge, it's not just the contract, Victoria. It's prison, federal prison, for both of us. Henderson cleared his throat. Mr. Vance, my phone just buzzed. Richard froze. What is it? Henderson looked at his phone screen. It's a summons. Ms. Sterling wants to see you. Both of you. Where? Richard asked, his face grey. The war room, Henderson said. Operations Center. She says to bring the first-class passenger with you. Richard looked at Victoria. The arrogance was gone from her face, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. Fix your hair, Richard said, his voice dead. We're going to beg for our lives. The operations center of JFK was a place few civilians ever saw. It was a massive room filled with wall-to-wall screens displaying flight paths, weather patterns, and crew schedules. Usually, it was a hive of controlled chaos. Today, it was silent. The screens showed a sea of red. Cancelled, delayed, return to gate. In the center of the room was a glass-walled conference room known as the War Room. Inside, a team of lawyers sat around a long obsidian table. At the head of the table sat Nia Sterling. She had changed. The hoodie was gone. In its place, she wore a sharp, tailored black blazer over a white silk blouse. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek ponytail. She looked every inch the billionaire titan she was. On the table in front of her, battered and scuffed with a dirty footprint clearly visible on the cover, was the folder. The door opened. Security guards escorted Richard and Victoria Vance into the room. Victoria tried to walk tall, but her legs were shaking. The room was freezing cold. Nia didn't look up. She was typing on her laptop. The sound of the keys was the only noise in the room. Sit, Nia said. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She sounded bored. Richard and Victoria sat in the 2 chairs placed opposite her, like naughty schoolchildren in the principal's office. Nia stopped typing. She slowly closed the laptop. She looked at Victoria. Comfortable? Nia asked. I can have someone bring you a mimosa if the chair isn't to your liking. Victoria looked down at her hands. Ms. Sterling, Save it, Nia said. She tapped the folder with a manicured fingernail. Let's talk about karma, Victoria. You believe in karma, don't you? You must. You spent 20 minutes lecturing me about my place in the world. Nia opened the folder. I was going to read this on the plane, Nia said, flipping through the pages. I was going to use the 7-hour flight to decide if Vance Global Logistics deserved a renewal. I saw some irregularities in the numbers, but I thought, hey, maybe it's a clerical error. Maybe Richard Vance is a good man. I'll hear him out in London. Nia looked at Richard. But I didn't get to London. Did I, Richard? No, Miss Sterling, Richard whispered. Because your wife decided I didn't belong in first class, Nia continued. She threw my bag. She kicked this folder, and when she kicked it, a few papers slid out. Nia pulled a single sheet of paper from the file and slid it across the table toward Richard. Do you know what this is? Richard looked at the paper. He closed his eyes. It was an invoice for jet fuel, an invoice for a flight that never existed. It's a fake invoice, Nia said. One of hundreds. You've been billing Pan Atlantic for fuel for phantom flights, skimming the top. About $12 million over 3 years. Victoria gasped. She looked at her husband. Richard, 12 million? I did it for you, Richard snapped at her. Nia leaned forward. Here is the twist, Victoria. If you had let me stay in my seat, if you had just sat in 1B and drank your champagne, I would have fallen asleep. I was tired. I wouldn't have opened this folder until I got to the hotel in London. And by then, Richard might have had time to meet me, to spin a story, to cover his tracks. You might have gotten away with it for another year. Nia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. But because you grounded the plane, because you forced me to sit in a terminal with nothing to do but read. Nia slammed her hand on the folder. I read everything. I cross-referenced it with the ground crew. I found the shell companies. She looked at the lawyers. Counsel, what is the status of the Vance Global contract? The lead lawyer, a woman with glasses named Jessica, stood up. Terminated for cause, effective immediately at 12:30 p.m. We have also filed a freezing order on all assets connected to Mr. and Mrs. Vance to recover the stolen funds. And the authorities? Nia asked. The FBI is waiting in the hallway, Jessica said. Victoria let out a strangled cry. The FBI? For a seat dispute? No, Victoria, Nia said, standing up. She walked around the table until she was standing right next to Victoria's chair. She leaned down, whispering into her ear. For wire fraud, for embezzlement, and for corporate espionage. You see, when you steal a seat, you're just rude. When you steal millions from a company that transports people, that's a federal crime. Nia straightened up and looked at the security guards. Get them out of my sight, and tell the pilots to spin up the engines. I have a meeting in London, and I'm running late. Richard Vance put his head on the table and began to weep. Victoria sat frozen, staring at the scuffed folder that had destroyed her life. Wait! Victoria cried out as the guards grabbed her arms. Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Just let us go. We'll pay it back. Nia turned her back on them, walking toward the window to look at her fleet of planes. You can't pay it back, Victoria, Nia said softly. You don't have any money. I just seized it all. As they were dragged out of the room, Victoria Vance looked back one last time. She saw Nia Sterling, the girl in the hoodie, standing tall against the backdrop of the runway. The door clicked shut. Nia let out a long breath. She picked up her phone and dialed her father. It's done, she said. The rot is cut out. We can fly. But the story wasn't over yet. Because while the Vances were finished, the video of the incident on the plane was just starting to go viral. And the world was about to weigh in. The Vances were escorted out of JFK in handcuffs, shielded by jackets pulled over their heads, but they couldn't hide from the digital storm that had already made landfall. While Nia had been in the war room, a passenger in seat 2B, the businessman, had uploaded a video to Twitter. It was a clear, high-definition recording of Victoria screaming, "I own this seat," and shoving Naya's bag. The caption simply read, "The moment Karen grounded my flight and lost her husband's empire." Karma, Pan Atlantic. By the time Victoria was being fingerprinted at the federal holding facility in Lower Manhattan, the video had 40 million views. The internet is a cruel judge, and it works faster than the FBI. Within hours, Victoria Vance was trending worldwide. The internet sleuths didn't just mock her, they dismantled her. They found her old social media posts bragging about exclusive access. They found photos of her and Richard on yachts bought with stolen money. They turned her "Do you know who my husband is?" scream into a remix that played in clubs from Berlin to Ibiza. But the memes were the least of their problems. 6 months later, the real trial began. It wasn't the media circus Victoria had hoped for. She had imagined a glamorous defense where she would cry and be forgiven. Instead, it was a cold, brutal dismantling of their lives. The courtroom was packed. Nia Sterling didn't attend. She didn't need to. She sent her lawyers, a team of sharks who smelled blood. Richard Vance looked like a ghost. He had lost 30 pounds. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by a cheap button-down that hung loosely on his frame. Victoria sat beside him, her roots showing, her face devoid of the expensive treatments she could no longer afford. The prosecution was merciless. They played the video from the plane. Then, they projected the spreadsheets Naya had found in the folder. "Exhibit C," the prosecutor announced. An email from Mrs. Vance to her husband, dated July 14th. Subject, the Tahiti trip. Text body. "Just squeeze the fuel budget again. No one checks. I need the villa upgrades." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Victoria squeezed her eyes shut. That email was the nail in the coffin. It proved she wasn't just a beneficiary of the fraud. She was an active participant. She knew the money was stolen. She demanded it be stolen so she could live like a queen. The defense attorney tried to argue that Victoria was under stress, that it was a momentary lapse of judgment. The judge, the Honourable Justice Margaret Halloway, wasn't buying it. She adjusted her glasses and looked down at the couple. "Greed," Justice Halloway said, her voice echoing in the silent room, "is a common sin. But arrogance is a dangerous one. You didn't just steal $12 million from a company. You grounded a fleet. You disrupted the lives of thousands of people. You treated a fellow human being, Ms. Sterling, as subhuman because she didn't wear the right clothes." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Vance, for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and embezzlement, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison." Richard slumped forward, sobbing into his hands. "And Mrs. Vance," the judge continued. Victoria looked up, eyes wide with terror. "For your role in the conspiracy, and for the assault that brought this entire scheme to light, I sentence you to 8 years. 8 years? Victoria shrieked, standing up. "For a seat? I just wanted a seat." "And now you have one," the judge said calmly, banging the gavel. "In a 6x8 cell. Take them away." As the bailiffs dragged them out, Victoria looked toward the back of the courtroom. She saw Sarah, the flight attendant she had bullied. Sarah was sitting in the gallery, looking strong, free, and employed. Sarah didn't smile. She just watched as the woman who tried to ruin her day was led away to ruin her own life. The Vances' assets were seized immediately. The Hamptons house, gone. The Manhattan penthouse, sold. The jewelry, the cars, the stocks, all liquidated to pay back Pan Atlantic Airlines. But the sweetest twist was yet to come. 1 year later, JFK Terminal 4 had been renovated. It was brighter, cleaner, and more efficient. The panicked atmosphere of the Vance grounding was a distant memory. Nia Sterling walked through the terminal. She was wearing a hoodie again, a clean navy blue one this time, and jeans. She still preferred comfort over fashion. But now, when she walked, the staff didn't look at her with suspicion. They smiled. They waved. "Morning, Miss Sterling," Marcus called out from the gate. He had been promoted to station manager. "Morning, Marcus," Nia waved back. She wasn't flying today. She was there for a ceremony. She walked to Gate A1, the very gate where the drama had started. A crowd had gathered. There were news cameras, but this time the vibe was celebratory. A red ribbon was strung across the entrance to a new lounge. Above the lounge, a silver plaque gleamed. It didn't say VIP Lounge. It read, "The Future Aviators Scholarship Center." Nia stepped up to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd. In the front row sat 20 young men and women. They were diverse, from all walks of life. Some wore hoodies, some wore suits. All of them looked hungry for a chance. "A year ago," Nia began, her voice amplified through the terminal, "I was told I didn't belong in a specific seat. I was told that because of how I looked, I wasn't worthy of respect." She paused, making eye contact with a young girl in the front row who was clutching a battered backpack, just like Nia used to. "That experience cost the airline millions of dollars in a single day," Nia continued. "But it recovered something much more valuable. It recovered the truth." She gestured to the plaque. "The money recovered from the Vance seizures, roughly $12 million, has not gone back into the company profits. It has been put into a trust. This trust will fund full-ride scholarships for pilots, engineers, and aviation managers from underrepresented backgrounds." Applause erupted. The students in the front row beamed. "We are calling it the 1A scholarship," Nia smiled, "because seat 1A shouldn't be reserved for the people who think they own the world. It should be reserved for the people who are going to change it." She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. Later that afternoon, as the event wound down, Nia sat in the empty lounge, looking out at the tarmac. A Boeing 777 was pushing back, ready for the evening flight to London. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from the prison system, a standard alert for victims of crime regarding offender status. Inmate Victoria Vance has been transferred to general population. Nia looked at the message. She felt no joy, no vindictive thrill. She just felt a sense of closure. Victoria was in a place where no amount of screaming would get her an upgrade. She was finally learning that in the real world, respect is earned, not bought. Nia swiped the notification away and deleted it. She didn't have time to worry about the past. She stood up, grabbed her backpack, and walked toward the exit. She had a plane to catch. And this time, she knew exactly where she was sitting. Not because she owned the plane, but because she knew who she was. And that was a ticket money couldn't buy. And that is the story of how a single act of entitlement brought down an empire. It's a brutal reminder that you never truly know who you are talking to. Victoria Vance saw a girl in a hoodie and saw a victim. She should have seen a boss. She thought her status made her bulletproof. But in the end, her arrogance was the very weapon that took her down. The next time you're in an airport or a coffee shop or just walking down the street, remember Nia Sterling. Remember that kindness costs nothing. But rudeness can cost you absolutely everything. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. And let me know in the comments. What would you do if someone stole your seat? I'll see you in the next video.